Take a quick look at this man. Look at his grill. That exaggerated swagger of a horse racer. Look at his balls. His steel balls. This is what peak riding by a Rocky looks like in JoJo's, and not only one of my personal highest ranked characters in Steel Ball Run, but generally what I think is to be one of the best written characters in the entire JoJo series. And to explain this, I'll be doing a full analysis into the character of Gyro Zeppeli. We're going to be starting from the very beginning, looking at his backstory to analyzing two of his fights, the only two fights in Steel Ball Run that we have as his solo fight. And through all of this, we'll paint the picture of Gyro Zeppeli, and I'll be able to convince you that he's one of the best written characters in all of JoJo and maybe just anime period. So as we begin, you know the drill. If you enjoy JoJo's, I highly recommend that you like and maybe subscribe to my channel, as I try and make JoJo videos at least once per week when I'm not addicted to playing Yakuza like I currently am. Now, Gyro is one of JoJo's most interesting characters with a great story that will probably make you cry by the time you finish reading it. And with Steel Ball Run being so highly rated, I think in part that can be attributed to Araki and his great writing with characters such as Gyro. And really just how consistent Araki was while he was writing them throughout the entire manga. So as we go through the fights and Gyro's backstory, along the way I will highlight to you certain points to make you understand his character more and also show you why he truly is one of the best written characters in this masterpiece of a manga. So to start off, we go to the very beginning. Wait, not that far. A little bit forward. A little bit more. Okay, we start off at the start of Gyro's backstory when he's about age 13 in the Kingdom of Naples, which JoJo Wiki lists this as a fictional country, but apparently Wikipedia says that this was a real country at one point in time, so I don't know which one is true. Gyro was trained in the art of the spin, which for this video I won't really explain the spin as much, as if you're watching this you probably have already read part 7 already, so all you need to know is he can spin his steel balls by harnessing its rotational energy, and in true JoJo's fashion, one small not assuming power like that ends up becoming the most broken power ever. Gyro also comes from a family of executioners in the Kingdom of Naples, and honestly, just look at the drip. These executioner outfits are just so cool, and just look at Gyro as well. This man was aura farming since he was a teenager. Now, there's two main things that you need to know about Gyro's backstory that I'm going to highlight, and number one is that Gyro does not really like women. Well, not in that way. He's actually really good with women. He's somewhat of a womanizer, as you can tell, but one thing about him is that he refuses to let any woman during the race ride on his horse, as in his words, Lady Luck would be jealous if he let another woman ride with him. But in his backstory, apparently he allows him to ride something else. Anyways, number two is Gyro is rebellious, and especially rebellious towards his Zepelli family. Gyro grew up with a very wealthy family in the Kingdom of Naples, with his father not only being the executioner but also a surgeon, so basically bro hadn't made it out for himself. But in Gyro's backstory, we see a few instances of him being rebellious. The first one being how he let a female prisoner get away after she bit off a few fingers of a few guards, also him sleeping with a married patient, and then him also trying to restore another patient's vision against what his mother said. Basically, no matter what Gyro was told by his family, he just said, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. And this also leads us into the reason why Gyro even joined the Steel Ball Run race, as it's not for the money or the status of winning the race, but actually to grant amnesty, or essentially being able to pardon a young boy from his kingdom that he believes to be falsely framed and imprisoned. Against what his father told him, and especially against the Zepelli family tradition of everyone becoming an executioner, Gyro decided to take his own path. And he even continues to rebel even as he joins the race. I mean, look at Gyro when he was in the Kingdom of Naples, and then look at Gyro in the very first start of the race. This man went all the way across the sea into America and now has grills and this whole get up to him now. Now, these two highlighted points I have, keep these in mind as we analyze his fights, as these will be very important into the character of Gyro. And you can see Araki start to incorporate this into Gyro's character literally from the first chapter, or rather the second chapter. Isn't it interesting that for JoJo's, we don't get to meet JoJo until chapter 2, but let's fast forward to chapter 2 now. Before we head into the fights for Gyro, we're first going to analyze the relationship between Johnny Joestar and Gyro, as this is very important to his character. And the main thing I want to highlight is that Gyro doesn't really need to help Johnny out. Now, later on in the manga, that may change, but in their initial meeting, Gyro doesn't really need to help someone else out. But at the same time, Johnny needs Gyro's help. Gyro entered into a transcontinental horse race in the hopes of winning it, and then all of a sudden this paraplegic guy comes up to him trying to learn the spin, and he decides to help him. And at the start of the race, we see Gyro came very prepared for the steel ball run race, having a carefully selected assortment of items such as his trusty stuffed animal, and also throwing out things that he may not need, such as toilet paper and toothpaste, which Gyro probably stinks. And the power of the steel balls is already shown to be much more powerful than the other racers, already giving him another advantage. Having some crippled guy try and ride with you the whole time could be something that just really would hold him back, but Gyro naturally just has an altruistic side to him, and this is shown in his backstory that he likes to help other people who just really need assistance. So him seeing this young guy come up in a wheelchair, just absolutely fascinated by his spin technique, and then seeing how the spin actually helped Johnny get back up on his horse, and then not only that, but he saw how consistent and determined Johnny was to learn the spin and ride with Gyro, he decides to help him. Not so much for Gyro's game, but honestly just to help Johnny out. And this is even shown with the first leg of the race that Gyro is the first place winner, basically by himself. And yes, his rank was later taken back, but he already is shown to be very competent in this race, and he only initially teams up with Johnny because they were attacked by a stand user, where we also see a very important moment in the bond between Johnny and Gyro. In the second leg, when they're attacked by Miss Robinson, Johnny is initially hit, and as he's laying there bleeding on the ground, he tells Gyro that a race is a race. There's no reason for Gyro to wait for Johnny, and Gyro even acknowledges this, saying that they are both rivals in this race, so he should head onwards. And as Johnny tells Gyro to leave him and go on, Gyro does a full 180 to chase after Miss Robinson, wielding his steel balls to attack her head on. Now, this shows you so much about Gyro. The fact that Johnny is literally there screaming at him to leave him, and Johnny not even understanding why Gyro would even stay to help him, but Gyro literally risking his own life to help someone else that he barely even knows at this point. And this is the start of the bond between Johnny and Gyro, and how Gyro ends up becoming one of the best Joe Bros, as they camp out for the night after the fight, and Gyro starts to help Johnny learn the spin. Now, we don't get exact dialogue as to why Gyro did this, but after knowing his backstory, it could be easily assumed that Gyro is just impressed by Johnny and his determination to follow him and learn the spin, but also that Gyro just truly wants to help people, and he especially wants to help people when they're in their time of need and at risk of dying. Take like Marco and his patients, for example. And as we continue throughout the race, Gyro doesn't really need to do all of this. Gyro doesn't need to go against Valentine. Gyro doesn't need to collect all of the corpse parts. His sole reason for joining this race was just the win and to gain pardon for Marco. Now, obviously there's reasons for him going against Valentine with Johnny and things like that, but in a true sense of the race, doing all of these extra things is going to hold him back from getting first place, as it takes a lot of time, as they have to take detours and things like that. But once again, Gyro is just the best homie. He's not just gonna leave Johnny hanging by himself, so he joins him to help his bro out. And that now leads us to the fourth stage, about halfway through this race, as we're on our way to Kansas City, where we meet Ringo Road again. And first of all, I don't know why, but in the JoJo community, Ringo Road is just like greatly loved. I see so much fan art of him. He's in the video games as like a background voice actor, and I see a Rocky draw him a lot, so I don't really know why. I guess it's just because he looks really cool. But this is where we get the first solo fight of Gyro. Most of the fights in Steel Ball Run are going to be both Johnny and Gyro, but this is the first time that we see just Gyro face off against Ringo Road again. And when I told you to remember those things earlier, we're going to now go back to bullet point number 2. It's going to be very important for this fight. To set the stage, Johnny and Gyro have been in like a Groundhog Day type of environment where they can't get out of this forest without going back right where they ended up, no matter what path they take, when they stumble upon a tiny cottage where we meet Ringo Road again. We enter in with Gyro, Johnny, and Hot Pants, where we see Ringo Rodekin face off against another racer named Gaucho, which is just like another random racer. And we get our first glimpse into the character Ringo, and he's pretty cool from the first time you see him. He's taunting Gaucho into a duel when they both fire Ringo Ringo hits like an ultra instinct type of dodge, narrowly dodging a bullet just to return fire, striking Gaucho right in the heart and defeating him instantly on some Red Dead Redemption type of gameplay. As the group then approaches Ringo calls out Gyro specifically, saying that if they were to fight at this moment, there's basically no way that Gyro would be able to win in a duel between them. And he says that it's actually Johnny who has a greater chance of winning, as Gyro just doesn't actually have the courage to actually take Ringo's life, since it's just really not in his nature to do so, but he can tell that Johnny would take the fight that far. Now, this is very important to understanding Gyro, as this is a character that has never met Johnny or Gyro before during this race, yet he just so accurately described Gyro down to a T. Gyro comes from the Zepelli family, and since a young age, he's had his family lessons instilled in him that have honestly been a mental block stopping him from any progress. He's been raised to follow just a strict set of rules and to only use his steel balls whenever it's to benefit the state, and as we later see, he was even told not to use his steel balls for fighting, having grown up in a very strict environment. However, like I said, Gyro is rebellious, which we'll see an example of that very shortly, and we can tell that his backstory is holding him back as we see Gyro at this moment. Imagine if he was to hit Ringo with the steel balls right now, what would happen? And we see the ball essentially phase through him as Gyro lacks the confidence to actually win and actually kill Ringo. We also learn of Ringo's stand, the Mandem, a very British sounding stand, but basically it's kind of broken to where he can turn the hand on his wristwatch, which will then rewind time by exactly 6 seconds. No more, no less, returning everything to how it was exactly 6 seconds ago. And as we all know, time stop abilities and Jojos Bizzare Adventure, they're pretty powerful and broken. And as the group is stuck in this time loop and unable to escape, Ringo even tells the group that the only way to escape this is to kill him, which he also says that Gyro just can't do. So then Gyro, Johnny, and Hot Pants all initially attempt to sneak attack Ringo and gang up on him, but honestly Ringo bodies them pretty easily, just really showing a clear image that this group is just not strong enough to defeat him at this moment. We see Hot Pants use her stand to attempt to create a hand to sneak up on Ringo, with him noticing it and shooting it right away, at the same time that Johnny attacks, shooting his spin at him, with Ringo firing back and injuring Johnny, as Gyro steps in at this moment, throwing his steel ball, which makes contact with Ringo's ear, but also allows Ringo to shoot him as well. Basically, Ringo just one-tapped the entire group. And Ringo, being the G that he is, after just defeating all of them, goes up to Gyro specifically and tells him that he knows that Gyro was basically acting on emotion from seeing Johnny get shot, and that made Gyro attack preemptively. And as Ringo thought, Gyro just doesn't have it in him to be able to kill Ringo with attacks like that. And as Gyro is laying there, Ringo points his gun at him, telling him that he only has one shot left, but he's not even going to waste a bullet on Gyro, since basically he knows that Gyro is no longer a threat since he has no chance of killing Ringo. As we see Ringo take Johnny inside into the cabin. Gyro gets back up, and as his steel balls return back to him, he gets a sudden realization that Ringo's gun must have a fixed range to it, and realizing that his steel balls were just at the edge of that range. And with that being said, Johnny must still be alive, as he was just at the edge of Ringo's range. And this gives Gyro some determination to continue fighting to go save his bro Johnny. With Gyro getting up, heading towards the cabin, when he suddenly gets vision of his father telling him not to go towards the cabin, and if Gyro does so, he's going to lose. He gets visions of his father, who continues to question him, questioning why Gyro is even going towards the cabin and what his motives are, and says that the sentimentality of wanting to go save Johnny is just eating away at his heart and creating vulnerability, and sentimentality will be the downfall of the Zepelli family and the art of the steel balls. Now, this is almost the perfect way to have Gyro enter into his first solo fight, and a perfect explanation of a lot of Gyro's backstory and his character. Gyro went all the way across the ocean into America, not for himself, but to pardon a young boy who was wrongly accused, someone that honestly doesn't play too much of a significant impact into Gyro's life. He tried to help out patients and everyone anytime he could, and all throughout the race from the very start, he's done his best to help out Johnny Johnny, despite it holding him back from his true goal of winning, and it has honestly created a weakness in him. But that is just Gyro's character, and Araki was very consistent in writing Gyro that way. His father continues on saying that victory is irrelevant, and even gives him an order to leave the orchard and abandon Johnny, and that whether or not Marco's innocent or not just doesn't matter, that Gyro must leave and finish the race for his own gain, which Gyro responds back in a rebellious way and questions why is it that Marco has to be executed. He questions his father, saying what is the meaning of the corpse that Johnny wants to find, and that his path to understanding this is Gyro's priority, or else he won't be able to move forward, not even to the path of his own future, and that is why Gyro joined the Steel Ball Run race. Now, in these 2 pages alone, we get so much information on the character of Gyro. It's just so cool to read. But a few things that I want to specifically highlight is it's very interesting that he says that he wants to find the corpse that Johnny wants to find, showing once again, he's not just doing this for himself, but he's doing this to help Johnny. And admittedly, he is curious about the corpse, but this is Johnny's goal to find the corpse, not Gyro's. Yet he continues to help him through this, even when it puts Gyro in harm's way, even when it takes Gyro off of his own path towards winning the race just to help out Johnny. Also, with him saying that he joined the Steel Ball Run race to race towards the path of his future, think of this moment as Gyro breaking out from the traditions of the Zepelli family. Despite being raised in such a strict environment, Gyro left his family and went all the way across the ocean into America to join this wacky horse race. Despite just blindly following his family's advice of becoming an executioner or surgeon because that's what the Zepelli family always did, he instead decided to take his own path and to carve his way towards his own future, to truly understand who is Gyro Zeppeli. Gyro, now feeling determination after realizing what must be done and feeling like he has a chance to win, continues on to the cabin, throwing his steel ball, which has been infused with one of the corpse eye at this moment. And this is also where we first see the steel ball take a somewhat humanoid shape as the guardian of the corpse part comes out of it, as he uses the corpse eye ability to scan the room, which he scans the interior of the cabin, seeing that Ringo has discovered the next location of the corpse part by using Johnny. And with this, Gyro goes to the cabin, realizing that this is now going to be a game of chess and that he can no longer back down as he approaches. He can no longer leave this orchard, and the first one between him and Ringo to make a bad move will lose no matter how hard they fight against it. And he rushes in for a surprise attack, throwing the steel ball at Ringo, hitting his face, as Ringo at the same time uses his stand to rewind time, negating the attack. And this is also a moment where we see how high of a fighting IQ Gyro has, especially when it comes to his steel balls, because Gyro didn't just thoughtlessly throw a steel ball at Ringo. He actually at that moment used his scan ability on Ringo when the steel ball struck him, realizing that Ringo had an old wound on his collarbone, and he also realizes that he can now target this, and as this is on his left side, which is also the side where Ringo has his watch, which he uses his stand to rewind time with, if he is to hit this, it can paralyze the left side of his body, making Ringo unable to use his watch to rewind time and give Gyro the advantage. Now having the confidence that he actually has a chance to win, Gyro kicks down the door, challenging Ringo to a face-to-face close-range fight, realizing that neither one of them can back down, and also realizing that at a distance, Ringo just may win, so he chooses to go up in a close range fashion, almost in like an old western duel kind of thing. It's just really cool to see. And they both simultaneously draw their weapons, striking each other, and as he planned, Gyro hits Ringo's collarbone, paralyzing his left side, but at the same time, Ringo uses his gun to shoot his own watch, being able to use the bullet to successfully rewind time, and now can go back into the fight knowing of his own weakness. Gyro and Ringo stand off again, with Gyro yelling at him to go one more time as they both draw their weapons and both hit each other, but this time Gyro predicted Ringo to do this, as this is a chess battle, knowing that after making Ringo realize his weakness of his collarbone, the second time they would go, Ringo would use his hand to defend it, trying to protect his collarbone from paralyzing him. But Gyro thought of this, and he actually uses his steel ball to launch a shard of wood that was falling from the ceiling to pierce that through Ringo's hand into his collarbone, successfully being able to outsmart Ringo, as Ringo falls to the ground, acknowledging his defeat, realizing that he's been outsmarted as Gyro delivers the finishing blow, ending Ringo. The same finishing blow that Ringo initially thought that Gyro didn't have in him. Everything that led up to this moment, the fact that in the very beginning of the fight, Ringo told Gyro almost multiple times and consistently that he is not going to have it in his heart to kill Ringo. For Gyro, as he approaches the cabin, to have a discussion with his father, to almost break out the shell of his backstory and rebel against his Zepelli tradition and rebel against his family, to then be able to successfully stand off against Ringo and deliver that finishing blow towards him, is just peak writing. Araki was cooking during this arc, and this is just proof that Gyro is rebellious and that Araki is very consistent with his writing. And we're not done, because now we're gonna circle back to number 1 on my whiteboard and how Gyro refuses to let girls ride on his horse, as we now analyze Gyro's second fight, this time the legendary fight between Gyro and Funny Valentine, what you can call the final showdown. We fast forward in the series to right near the ending, with Valentine having gained control of the corpse parts that are in the body of Lucy, and just at the moment right after Valentine just defeated Diego, which that fight alone is an amazing story. So if you're interested in hearing about that, if you haven't already seen it, I made a full analysis similar to this one on Diego Brando, into where I deep dive into that fight. But now back to Gyro. Johnny and Gyro pursue after Valentine for the last showdown, with basically the fate of all America and possibly the entire world on the line if they allow Valentine to get away with the corpse parts. And just look at this panel. I just know Araki had so much fun drawing such an old western standoff panel, and it just generally looks so cool. Lucy, having the corpse parts, has also powered up Valentine, awakening D4C Love Train, which is pretty broken in itself, as it allows Valentine to become basically invincible by allowing him to hide within a pocket dimension, or rather like a gap in space, which you can see by a wall of light that follows him. As Johnny and Gyro approach, knowing that the power that Valentine now wields, Gyro tells Johnny that they must achieve the peak of the spin power and utilize the golden ratio. As they approach, Valentine hides within the pocket dimension, and as Johnny goes for an attack, Valentine counters, chopping off Johnny's hand, basically leaving him temporarily incapacitated for the fight, as Gyro is left alone to chase after Valentine by himself. And before Valentine is able to end Johnny, he gets distracted as Lucy is in the train car as her husband Steven Steele approaches, and knowing that he cannot let Lucy get away, he charges towards her, going to attempt to gain her again. But at the same time, Steven Steele yells out that he needs Gyro's help to take Lucy away, and Gyro is actually able to reach her first before Valentine, throwing her on the back of his horse as they run away. Now, let's just pause here for a quick second, and I just want you to remember how I said that Gyro doesn't let women ride on his horse because that seat is basically reserved for Lady Luck, and she just might get jealous if he lets another girl ride on his horse. Just keep that in mind as we continue. As Gyro and Lucy run away towards the Atlantic Ocean, Valentine pursues after them, with Lucy's power having gained the corpse parts in her, causes the ocean to split around them. Somewhat of, I guess, a reference to the Bible as the parting of the water, but then we see Valentine slowly walk up, almost like a horror movie villain, and honestly, his aura here is just like menacing. And Gyro, with his back to the ocean, realizing that at this point there's basically no escape out of this, tells Valentine that this is going to be the place that they will settle things. Gyro plans to use the ocean to his advantage, as he knows that in order to attack, Valentine must temporarily come out of the pocket dimension, and he knows that if he can get Valentine near the ocean as he temporarily phases out of the pocket dimension, he can hopefully make Valentine drown. And this is going to be something that he's going to have to execute perfectly, as there's only a very slim moment to attack with his steel balls to achieve this. The fight commences with Valentine telling Gyro that he already knows that this will come down to just one move, as Gyro charges forward using the golden rectangle on his horse to achieve the golden spin, as Gyro wields his steel balls as Valentine goes between dimensions, bringing back two other versions of himself, causing Gyro to have to decide which one is the real Valentine to attack. But at the last moment before he chooses, he notices another Valentine appear behind him using the pocket dimension, with Gyro instantly countering with his steel ball. D4C blocks it while Valentine attempts to pull D4C back into the light when we first see Gyro stand ball breaker, which is like a visualization of the spin. And the ball hits the dimension wall, with ball breakers passing through the wall with its immense amount of spin energy to cross over the dimensional barrier, causing Valentine's cells to age rapidly by inducing sentience in Valentine's cells, which may sound a little bit weird, but just stick with me. The main world Valentine falls to the ground as Gyro throws another steel ball at the alternate versions of Valentine, lining it up perfectly to cause them to shoot each other, successfully defeating all 3 Valentines at one go and causing the ocean water to rush in, covering them, just as Gyro had planned earlier. Johnny shouts out that Gyro won, the fight is over. Not just Gyro won, but they won. And with having used such an immense power with the steel balls, Gyro notices that there may be something wrong with him now, but it doesn't matter because he's already won. And Valentine, almost like the Undertaker, rises up saying one move. The one who misread one move was not Valentine, it was Gyro. As Valentine's body continues to rapidly age, as Johnny yells out, saying just one more attack to land is gonna be what it takes. And at this moment, an old wound that Gyro had suffered from earlier in the fight starts to open up, as Valentine tells him that this wound is already heading towards his heart, causing Gyro to bleed out. But before it can even reach there, Gyro could just leave Lucy behind and go into the pocket dimension to save himself. But Gyro doesn't care about that, and he tells Johnny that's nearby the final lesson of the spin, Lesson 5, that he's always tried to take the fastest shortcuts in this race, but the shortest route was a detour. It was the detour that was the shortest path. Something that might not make sense, but I'll explain in another video when I do a deep dive into the spin, because that has a lot of meaning to the entire steel ball run. Gyro, wielding his steel ball, rushes towards Valentine with Lucy still on the back of his horse, throwing his golden spin imbued steel ball at Valentine, but it can't reach Valentine in time as Valentine strikes back, cutting Gyro, as Valentine tells Gyro that his victory is actually just a stroke of luck. When Gyro first threw that steel ball at him and it passed through the dimensional gap, a very small, almost molecule part of it, so small that can be almost defined as infinitesimal or a non-zero quantity closer to zero than any non-zero real number is. That small of a little part of the steel ball scraped off, causing the steel ball to no longer be a perfect sphere and be able to reach its max power. Thus, the steel ball is not able to strike the dimension while at full power, which caused Valentine to be able to survive. And at this point, Gyro, having suffered 2 major wounds, falls off his horse as Johnny looks on in horror, seeing that his best friend, his best bro, is on the ground bleeding out, getting visions of the entire race together, remembering everything that he got to learn about Gyro, all of the challenges they faced together. As Valentine walks up, emptying his revolver into Gyro as he lays there on the ground, bringing the conclusion to one of the best stories of the steel ball run and bringing the final conclusion to the tale of Gyro Zeppeli. Man, that is a pretty emotional ending, but it's okay. I'll give you a second to wipe that tear away so we can now go back into breaking down what even just happened and how this in its own way is almost a perfect ending to the tale of Gyro. A few major things I want to highlight are Gyro knew that this would happen. Gyro had several moments leading up to this to leave. Even Valentine gave him an opportunity to save himself and go into the dimensional gap to save himself, but he at no point even looked back and only pursued on, knowing that this would be the end of him. Going into this, Gyro knew of his superstition of Lady Luck in the horse, yet in a moment's notice when the fate of Lucy was at risk as Valentine ran after her, he did not even hesitate to go against his own superstition to bring her on his horse to safety. Gyro also noticed that something was wrong with his steel ball and it no longer had that perfect spear, but he still chose to attack Valentine one last time. And in his heart, I like to believe that Gyro knew that this was going to be the end of him. He knew that luck would now not be on his side, but he knew at this moment that only Johnny would be able to defeat Valentine, and it's almost his duty to teach Johnny the final lesson of the spin in order to achieve that goal. And this is just what Gyro had to do, and in his true selfless nature, he did what needed to be done to help out others and help out Johnny. And as his luck ran out, even Valentine himself says that it was nothing but pure luck that made him survive, and even clarifies that because Gyro had Lucy ride his horse is the reason that Gyro was defeated, and that Lady Luck no longer being with Gyro now became an ally of Valentine. All throughout this story, Gyro selflessly put himself in harm's way to protect those that are in need around him, and truly did everything in his power to help others. From the very start of Gyro's upbringing to the reason for him joining the race, not for his own gain but to gain the pardoning of Marco, to joining the race and even as he didn't have to, helping out Johnny and becoming his best bro to help Johnny reach his goal of defeating Valentine, to at the very end still giving his life to protect Lucy and teach Johnny the final lesson of the spin. Gyro gave his life to protect those around him and rebelled against the Zepelli family lineage to take his own path in life, which man, can we just praise Araki, as this is just beautiful writing. And that brings a beautiful conclusion to the tale of Gyro Zeppeli.